So on the draw, this is a keep. We don't have a company or a hierarch or a path. But we still have a lot of our more important cards. It looks like our opponent is going to lead on a Cursed Catcher. That's a little bit worrisome. Looks like we are up against Merfolk, and definitely was planning on getting a island with this Misty Rainforest, and that would mean that all of our opponents' creatures with an island walking threat would become unblockable. So we'll see what our opponent does here. Probably still going to search for Hallowed Fountain. Could be a Silvergill Adept. Yep, there is the Silvergill Adept. And our opponent is revealing Master of the Pearl Trident. So that is a way of giving Merfolk Island Walk, but I don't know that we can really do anything about it, but except for draw into something like a path. So gonna get the Hallowed Fountain here. And just gonna play the Goyf here. There's an argument for Spellskite, but with our opponent's creatures about to have Island Walk, there's really no reason to put it into play here. So expecting to see possibly that Master of the Pearl Trident come down. And Merfolk is, it's not an easy matchup for this deck. That's for sure. Alright, well, here's our opponent. It looks like there's not going to be a Lord played. So in that case, I'll just trade off the Goyf for the Silvergill Adepts. Don't really mind it. Pretty surprised, but it looks like, okay, it's going to be a Kira Great Glass Spinner. But what we can do here is shock ourselves with Breeding Pool and pass with Spell Queller now available. So that sequence actually worked out fairly well for us. The fact that our opponent's creatures are untargetable right now isn't that important since we don't have any way to target those creatures. So the question is, if our opponent goes for this Master, do we Spell Queller it? And I think the answer is yes. So just gonna immediately flash in the Spell Queller. And now if our opponent does have a removal spell for the Spell Queller, that's obviously not good for us. But we were able to get the Spell Queller down, picked up a Scavenger Ooze here, and I'm just going to go ahead and get in with the Queller and pass. Alright, so here is a copy of Harbinger of the Tides. So we've got a couple ways we can go about answering this Harbinger. We can simply let it resolve, or we can Restoration Angel the Queller and counter the Harbinger with it. We could also Company here and try to hit something off the Company. I think I like just playing the Restoration Angel. That is going to mean that the Master of the Pearl Trident is set free by the Queller. So we're going to basically end up countering our opponent's Harbinger and then the Master of the Pearl Trident's going to come into play. That's going to mean that this Curse Catcher can get through with Island Walk here. So we picked up another copy of Collecting Company. Now we have to remember that our opponent does have Curse Catcher in play. So our Collecting Company could be countered, and I don't think I said that last turn, so definitely want to make that clear. So we do have to be aware of the fact that Harbinger of the Tides is a magic card. It's pretty good against us. I think we just go ahead and get in with the Restoration Angel. And then we can follow up with a Scavenging Ooze and a Spellskite. So we're definitely hoping that our opponent does not have more lords, basically. Also, Master of Waves would be quite good here. So I don't really like our position, but it is kind of what it is. Last turn, I suppose there was an argument for just playing Spellskite and playing Scavenging Ooze rather than holding up mana for Restoration Angel. To give us a little bit more protection against our opponent's hand. But here's a Lord of Atlantis. So our opponent did have another Lord, as it turned out. So our opponent has the option of activating Mutavault and dealing us 9 damage here, which would be pretty hard to recover from at that point. So yep, here's the Mutavault getting activated. Sorry, it's actually 10 damage. So we're going to take the 10 here, and there's not really anything we can do. So I'm going to go on to the next game. We've got some nice cards in the matchup. Worship is good. Sower of Temptation is actually really good here. We've also just got cards we didn't draw. Our removal spells are good. Reflector Mage is pretty solid. Spellskite isn't a card I really like that much in the matchup. Our opponent tends not to have that much removal. Prefer a card like Kitchen Finks. Reclamation Sage is also something that can deal with Spreading Seas and Aether Vial. So I think we consider boarding in Reclamation Sage as well. Probably don't want Vendilion Click here. Probably shave a Tireless Tracker. Actually, yeah, I think shaving one Tireless Tracker is fine. Alright, let's go with this configuration here. On the play. Scavenging Ooze is not a great card in the matchup. We do have 2, but we also have a Sunlance. We've got some interaction. So, definitely going to keep here. We just have to be worried about the Island Walkers and also cards like Spreading Seas. Here's Aether Vial on 1. So the question is, what do we search for here? Gonna go ahead and grab a Temple Garden. And we drew Goyf, which isn't a bad draw. So we have the option of what we want to play here, and I think we get a breeding pool, and we just jam Tarmogoyf and pass. We're hoping that our Temple Garden does not get spreading seized, obviously. Alternatively, if our opponent plays something like a Lord, I mean, we do have a one removal spell hand, but we also have Eternal Witness, which can get back the Sunlance. Alright, well, there's the spreading seas that we didn't want to see. We still have a green source, though, and drew Reclamation Sage for the turn. So, definitely hoping to draw another land. Doesn't actually matter that much what land it is. But, gonna play this Scavenging Ooze, and we're kind of prohibited from doing too much at the moment. There's a Curse Catcher, so our opponent's now going to be able to potentially put 2 creatures into play this turn. So if our opponent goes something like Lord, we're in really bad shape. Also, Adept Lord would be bad. Kira. I mean, Merfolk is traditionally good against fair decks, and we are playing a fair deck. So there's a lot of combination of cards that are going to be problematic in this sort of a situation. Our Goyf, if we're able to cast our Sunlance, the Goyf will get bigger. It's just a matter of if we can get to that point in the game, if we draw another land. So, looks like our opponent's got a couple options. Here's a Lord of Atlantis and an Aether Vial, and we'll see if this Aether Vial gets activated. Hopefully it does not. Alright, so just going to be an attack for 2, and a passing of the turn. So we were able to pick up a Windswept Heath here, which is a pretty good draw. So we can go ahead and crack that. And I'm just going to get the basic planes here. And fire off the Sunlance to get rid of this Lord of Atlantis. And we do have to be aware that our opponent could have something like a Harbinger of the Tides here. But with that being said, we still want to make this attack. And it looks like our opponent's just going to take it. So that was actually a pretty good turn there. Alright, here's a Silvergill Adept. So our opponent did have the Silvergill, as it turns out. And this is going to be an upkeep activation, so there's another Silvergill. So chaining Silvergills here, our opponent's able to keep gas in their hand, essentially. And a Lord here would be pretty good. If our opponent plays something like a Lord, we're going to want to draw a green source. If we draw a green source, we can go Witness plus Sunlance. An untapped green source, I should say. But here's a Mara Regery. Okay, so at least our opponent... It is a Lord, which is quite good, but our opponent does not have Island Walk, so we can just go ahead and make this trade. And I think we do want to make the trade. So we're going to trade our Ooze off for a Silvergill Adept. If we had a Collected Company in hand, I could definitely see an argument for trying to get rid of the Curse Catcher, but we don't have a company in hand. And it looks like this is going to be a Dismember on our Tarmogoyf. So that's going to clear out the board a reasonable amount. So we picked up a Path to Exile. Since we have the path, I think well, attacking here is a bit risky. But it's close. I don't think we attack with the ooze here. So the question is, do we just pass the turn and hold up Spell Queller, or would we rather play Reclamation Sage? And I kind of like just passing the turn here. We also now have Path to Exile available to us. So this is going to be a pretty important turn in this game. If our opponent casts a Merfolk, that will trigger the Mirror Reachery, and our opponent can potentially tap down our Scavenging Ooze. If our opponent just passes the turn, then we can eat something with Ooze and fire off the Path to Exile if we want to fire off the path. So that seems like a pretty good sequence for us. Alright, here is an Aether Vial activation for 2, so this could very, very easily mean a Lord. And it is a Lord, it's Lord of Atlantis. So that's going to mean all of our opponent's creatures have Island Walk, and it's actually, our opponent's just going to attack here with the Silvergill Adept. So that's a pretty smart attack by our opponent, choosing not to get in with the Reachery and the Curse Catcher, aware that we could have a card like Path to Exile, and as it turns out, we do have a path. So the question now becomes, do we fire off the path or not? And I think we do want to fire off the Path to Exile here. We can get rid of the Lord, and that's going to shrink down the Silvergill Adept. And now the question is, do we want to block the Adept or just simply make our Goyf into a 3/3? We're definitely going to make our Goyf bigger. Do we want to trade it off? It seems like a pretty close spot, honestly. I'm going to go ahead and try just taking the hit here. So we're going to exile one of the creatures, and the Goyf is going to keep us at a decent life total. Now we can make the same play of just passing with Goyf with Spell Queller at the ready. Alternatively, we could also attack with the Goyf and then plan on flashing in Spell Queller to make a block. And I also kind of like that. Alright, let's go ahead and attack with the Goyf. Our plan's going to be to flash in Spell Queller. And obviously if our opponent has Harbinger of the Tides, we're not going to beat that card here, but there's a lot of spots where we are going to be able to beat what our opponent has, assuming that it's not much, or, a Merfolk that isn't going to have that significant of an impact. Alright, well, it looks like Master Waves is going to come down here, and that's just going to be the game. Our opponent just had a really good draw again. So that's going to do it.